his own medical difficulties over these past years. Senator Whitfield Downs, just out of your picture. There's Justin.
And the right, Leonard Cohen.
Jacques Hébert hugging the eldest Trudeau son.
Monsieur Roger Roland, Shaul Nartinis, Jean-Mathieu Potvin, Booker Sim, Anne Danis, Alexandre Green et Gérald Val. Wow. Veuillez vous approcher, s'il vous plaît.
Écoute notre prière.
For all of us assembled here to worship in faith, that we may be gathered together again in God's kingdom, Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Friends, Romans, countrymen. I was about 6 years old when I went on my first official trip. I was going with my father and my grandpa Sinclair up to the North Pole. It was a very glamorous destination. But the best thing about it was that I was going to be spending lots of time with my dad. Because in Ottawa, he just worked so hard. One day, we were in Alert, Canada's northernmost point. A scientific, military installation that seemed to consist entirely of low, shed-like buildings and warehouses. Let's be honest, I was 6. There were no brothers around to play with. And I was getting a little bored because Dad still, somehow, had a lot of work to do. I remember a frozen, windswept Arctic afternoon when I was bundled up into a Jeep and hustled out on a special, top-secret mission. I figured I was finally going to be let into the reason for the existence of this high-security Arctic base. I was exactly right. We drove slowly through and past the buildings, all of them very gray and windy. And we rounded a corner and came upon a red one. We stopped. I got out of the Jeep and started to crunch across towards the front door. I was told no, to the window. So I clambered over the snowbank, was boosted up to the window, rubbed my sleeve against the frosty glass to see inside, and as my eyes adjusted to the gloom, I saw a figure hunched over one of many work tables that seemed very cluttered. He was wearing a red suit with a furry white trim. And that's when I understood just how powerful and wonderful my father was. Pierre Elliott Trudeau. The very words convey so many things to so many people. Statesman, intellectual, professor, adversary, outdoorsman, lawyer, journalist, author, and prime minister. But more than anything, to me, he was Dad. And what a dad. He loved us with a passion and a devotion that encompassed his life. He taught us to believe in ourselves, to stand up for ourselves, to know ourselves, and to accept responsibility for ourselves. We knew that we were the luckiest kids in the world, and that we had done nothing to actually deserve it. It was instead something that we would have to spend the rest of our lives to work very hard to live up to. He gave us a lot of tools. We were taught to take nothing for granted. He doted on us, but didn't indulge. Many people say he didn't suffer fools gladly. But I'll have you know he had infinite patience with us. He encouraged us to push ourselves, to test limits, to challenge anyone and anything. But there were certain basic principles that could never be compromised. Like I guess it is for most kids. In grade 3, it was always a real treat to visit my dad at work. As on previous visits, this particular occasion included a lunch at the parliamentary restaurant, which always seemed terribly important and full of serious people that I didn't recognize. But at 8, I was becoming politically aware. And I recognized one, whom I knew to be one of my father's chief rivals. Thinking of pleasing my father, I told a joke about him, a generic, silly little grade school thing. My father looked at me sternly, with that look I would learn to know so well, and said, Justin, on n'attaque jamais l'individu.
Attack the
On peut
individual.
être en
Justin,
désaccord complet
we can
avec
be
quelqu'un
in total disagreement with
sans
someone
pour autant le dénigrer.
without denigrating them as a consequence.
Et ce disant,
And saying that,
il se leva,
he stood up,
me prit la main
took me by the
et
hand,
m'amena rencontrer cet homme.
and brought me over to introduce me to this man.
C'était un gentil monsieur
He was a nice man
qui mangeait avec sa fille,
who was eating there with his
une
daughter,
fille blonde un peu plus jeune que moi.
a nice-looking blonde girl, a little younger
Il
than I
me
was.
parla amicalement un moment.
He spoke to me in a friendly
Et ce
manner
fut
for a
dès
bit,
lors que je compris
and it's at that point that I
avoir
understood
des opinions différentes de celles d'une autre
that
personne
having opinions that are different
n'empêchait aucunement
from those of another
de leur porter le plus grand respect en tant qu'individu.
does not preclude one being deserving of respect as an individual.
Parce que la simple tolérance
Because simple
ce
tolerance,
n'est pas assez.
mere tolerance is not
Un
enough.
respect réel et profond.
We need genuine and deep respect for each and every human being, notwithstanding their thoughts, their values, their beliefs, their origins. That's what my father demanded of his sons.
Et c'est ce qu'il exigeait de notre pays.
And that's what he demanded
Il
of his
l'exigeait
country.
par amour,
He demanded this out of a sense of love.
amour de ses fils,
Love of his sons.
amour de son pays.
Love of his country.
Et c'est pour ça que nous l'aimons tant.
And that's why we love him so.
Les lettres, les fleurs,
The letters, the flowers,
l'intimité des foules,
the dignity shown by the crowds
adieu.
in bidding their farewells.
Tout ça pour le remercier
All of this as a
de nous avoir
thank you, as a thank you for having loved us so much.
My father's fundamental belief in the sanctity of the individual never came from a textbook. It stemmed from his deep love for and faith in all Canadians. And over the past few days, with every card, every rose, every tear, every wave, and every pirouette, you returned his love. It means the world to Sash and me. Thank you. We have gathered from coast to coast to coast, d'un océan à l'autre,
From one ocean to another,
united in our grief, to say goodbye. But this is not the end. He left politics in '84, but he came back for Meech. He came back for Charlottetown. He came back to remind us of who we are and what we're all capable of. But he won't be coming back anymore. It's all up to us, all of us, now. The woods are lovely, dark and deep. He has kept his promises and earned his sleep. Je t'aime, papa.